Hello and welcome. I'm Angela Falkenberg, and as the slide says, I'm an experienced educational professional. And I'm using professional really deliberately because I want you to reflect on your work as an educator and what you know, and I want you to hold really tight to the notion that you know a lot. And I'll just say that I've titled the photo you're seeing as Yard Duty. Anxiety is certainly becoming a more common challenge for us as educators. 30% of people across their life course can experience some kind of anxiety, but it's reassuring to know that it's not dangerous, but however it can take over. And some interesting data that's appearing at the Australian level is that there has been a 50% increase in children being prescribed antidepressant medication over the last 6 years, and those rates are higher in low SES communities than high. And they're thinking that it's because children in more affluent communities have access to psychologists and the more of the cognitive therapy that can support them to make positive change, whereas in low SES communities, perhaps a more convenient or accessible way to manage it is medication. Last year, I, along with a number of, hundreds of leaders around Australia in independent Catholic and public schools, took part in a survey, and we certainly have identified that from the teacher and leader perspective, student anxiety is increasing alarmingly, and it is putting pressure on it. So a way to think about anxiety is emotions that are stuck in the body, and children and adults have not found a way to express them. When we can understand the origins of anxiety, we're better able to manage it. So I want you to pause for a moment and just reflect on what comes to mind when you think child with anxiety. Anxiety Canada has some really amazing resources, and I do provide the URL to reach them at the end of this presentation. But this clip about fight, flight and freeze provides some really good background to understanding from a child's perspective what's happening. So reflecting on the video, and it's talking about a simple physical, the way we think and the way we respond to anxiety. But it's important to understand there are lots and lots of types of anxiety. So the health professionals have identified 10. Agoraphobia, if we think about that in the context of school, is a fear of places and situations that might cause anxiety. That could be going to PE, it could be a certain part of the yard, it could be sitting with other children. It manifests in symptoms, so we can have rapid heartbeat, breathlessness, stomach aches, ruminating thoughts, or we call them tumble dry thoughts about self. But in essence, they're a barrier to having a positive participation in school and society, and they can certainly result in problems with relationships, because if we're having a meltdown or withdrawing, we're not having that opportunity to build some of the very things that keep us safe and well. So we can see here that anxiety can affect our thinking, it can affect our ability to do schoolwork, it can result in us avoiding stressful situations. We may not sleep well because we're worrying, we're ruminating, we have the tumble dry thoughts going over and over what's happened. As I said, if we're not participating in school activities, it can affect relationships and friendships. It affects the physical aches and pains, our clenched jaw, the stomach ache. We feel sick when we're thinking about participating in an activity. It can mean high-level assistance seeking. You need to be by the teacher, or you can't go anywhere without an adult's support. It can be seeking perfection, and therefore a highly stressful approach to schoolwork because we're worrying that it won't be good enough. It can also, with the withdrawal aspect, we don't seek help. We'll just stay silent rather than being open and surfacing what we need. That dependence on others, again, can limit where we go and what we do. And many of you might certainly be thinking about the children who have difficulty in joining in. So when you were reflecting on child with anxiety, were any of those at the forefront of your mind and thinking about that child? And it's important to understand that as educators, we too can have emotional responses that result in unhelpful patterns. We might see a particular child coming in, you look at their face and you think, oh no, here we go. Rather than just holding that thought and saying, it's a fresh day, what can we do? And given that we've identified a lot more children are presenting with anxiety, there is an emotional burden for educators. And I want to encourage you to think about how can you bend and it doesn't get to the point where you in fact break. So your resilience is really critical in this process of supporting these young people to have a positive experience. Later I'll talk about strategies, and as you implement them, we're really optimistic. As a profession, we're inherently positive and hopeful. We believe things can be better. But when something that appears to be on an improvement trajectory flips backwards, again, what's our thinking around that? Because a lapse is okay. A brief return to an old habit is a lapse, that's okay. But a relapse, a complete return to the old ways, can be more challenging for us, but it doesn't mean it isn't working. So how do we stay optimistic and hopeful in this? So I'm going to talk now about a range of strategies that can be implemented in the classroom. Some will be a better fit for your style or for the students you're working with. So what I'm giving you now is just a range. There's no one better than the other, and it's up to you to choose what you adapt. Now, the first one, and so critical, is that we do build a mental health literacy. As I said earlier, anxiety can be unexpressed emotion, and sometimes we don't give ourselves the space to really identify what that emotion is. So having a way to recognise, understand and manage our emotions can prevent mental illness, especially in ourselves. I want to be clear about that. And giving children the language to describe their feeling gives them those feelings a voice, and that's a really positive step forward. Dr. Michael Horton, and he has a program called No Scaredy Cats, and again at the end of this presentation you'll see a link to his work. But just this week I was in a webinar with him where he said, anxiety is learned over time and sometimes forms into a disorder. And that's what we want to prevent, is that it becomes an ongoing mental illness. I refer to the personal and social capability continuum of the Australian curriculum. It's a really great place to start when we're working with children and, in fact, their families around these issues, because part of the self-awareness is being able to recognise emotion in ourselves and in others, and self-management is being able to express emotion appropriately. So if we have the butterflies, if we're feeling really tense, having self-management strategies, not relying on others and certainly not causing others to carry the burden of our inappropriately expressed emotions. So there's a book called Worry by Dr. Dawn Hubner, and she in it identifies a strategy to actually name anxiety as a bully, to give it a name, to describe it. This is getting young children to work on this. And even on the internet I found make your own worry monster, a tin where children put their worries into. That's really interesting to me. I think we need to reflect too of what situations children handle well and use the appreciative inquiry lens to move them forward. And certainly we do this work in times of peace. And by that I mean we don't say, name your bully, blah, 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 when they're in that heightened emotion time. None of us are great productive thinkers when we're really stressed. So the dub there is what works well. When is this child handling transitions, handling things well, and what can we learn from that? So in naming the bully, it might be, I'll say my anxiety bully is called Donald. He is self-centred and doesn't care how his words might affect or limit me. He'd rather I don't leave the house and hide under my bed. He doesn't want me to know the fun of meeting new people and the good feelings that come with learning a new skill. He wants to be the boss. So fighting back against the bully is to remove the bully as the boss and get the child to be in the boss situation. It's really good to be reminded as educators. I mean, we probably don't. There's lots of this job that can, be quite anxiety-inducing, but it should be transitory. It shouldn't be sticking with us. So I'm going to give some scenarios. Anxiety is useful. Think about walking down a dark street, particularly if you're female. You're probably scanning the environment. You're listening carefully, thinking, is there any threat? However, if I'm back kicking the footy in the grand final, going for a goal, there's a certain amount of anxiety there that gets the adrenaline going and gets me absolutely focused in the moment. Or seeing a red-backed spider in your classroom, how do we manage that? What happens? So I want you to think about, what do you feel in your body and what's going on in your mind, and what do you do with these scenarios? So you're going through an RBT after having a drink with a friend. If you've been in that situation, what do you feel, what's going on, and what do you do? What about if you're travelling and you're at the airport and you can't find your passport? How much productive thinking is going on in that moment? How much emotion is coming into it? Or the scenario which teachers tell me is the worst ever, where you've written your reports and now you can't find the USB they're on. So we have these same challenges as young people have, but highly likely we've developed some strategies to manage these really well. Reflecting on your own management of tricky situations can in fact help children to problem solve. So one of the things as educators we certainly have control over is what we used to call the antecedents in classroom management, which is what we put in place to maximise the potential of our classrooms to be calm-inducing places. I never thought I would quote Donald Rumsfeld, but his thinking some years ago about known knowns, known unknowns and unknown unknowns, I thought quite well captured the role of the educator. So the known knowns in the terms of classroom organisation is the things that we know are going to happen. You know, we'll line up, we'll put our bags away, we'll sit on the floor, we'll get books out. So how we support our children in our classrooms to be able to do those with fluency, because there's nothing worse than not knowing how things go, or being, you know, feeling anxious because you're not really sure where the scissors go. So how do you introduce and model and teach the routines of the classroom? Predictability wherever possible is anxiety reducing. And in fact, in the times of COVID, we certainly know that unpredictability and uncertainty are fodder for anxiety. The second one of the known unknowns, which are potential risks in the classroom, we know some of these will happen. We know there could have to be an evacuation and a fire drill, so we rehearse those things. We talk to children about what we do if we see a strange dog in the yard, or if we see a tap overflowing and the floor is slippery. We talk about those things. They're kind of known. We don't know when they're going to happen, but we know it's highly likely that they will. And then there's the unknown unknowns, the things we really can't predict, which sometimes is where children with anxiety go to. You know, what if, I remember one child saying to me, but what if a spaceship lands on the oval? You know, well, you know, statistically highly, highly unlikely, and I'm not sure why they would have picked my school. But getting them to think about, well, we don't know if there will be an earthquake, but we do know that you've got teachers and leaders who are in charge, who know what to do. We've got a really fabulous police force. I talk to children about all of those people are experienced in those levels of response. And again, think of Nicola Spurrier with COVID. You know, Nicola knows has been a mantra that I've been using, and I have great faith in her ability. And that's what we want children to have, faith in the teacher to be an adult in charge, and the principal to know what they're doing. Within this, I think one of the challenges that's being identified is that we are not challenging the inappropriate behaviour of children, and we're in fact sometimes normalising it. I'm amazed how many parents have almost, I'm not going to say proudly, but are saying, oh, my child has anxiety. Like, that's a full stop at the end of it and the end of it. And I say, and how are you working with them? Is there somebody supporting them with strategies? You know, how do we work together on this? To say a child has anxiety as a full stop is really limiting for their life options and choices. So we need to challenge it. We need to push back, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. We really want their behaviour to move forward. So when I'm talking about challenging this behaviour in language, we have to believe that they can be better. So we need to activate our own growth mindsets. Interestingly, current researchers have identified that the students who have done better in the home learning environment are those with a strong internal locus of control. And by that it means they've got self-efficacy. They believe they can do it, they can have control, and they're not relying on external locus of control, as in other adults. So again, think about these children. How do we get them to activate their own problem solving, their own ability and their own belief in themselves? So we're not going to consciously or unconsciously accommodate reluctant or avoidant behaviour. You know, you're thinking, I've got this science experiment, oh gosh, there'll be a loud noise, oh, you know, Freddie won't like it, oh, maybe Freddie should be somewhere else for that. The issue is, how do we get Freddie to accommodate the loud noise? Sometimes children's anxiety will manifest in their catastrophising. You know, worst day ever, this always happens, I never... And we need to challenge that as well, because the habit, these repeated words and phrases can become habits and in fact lead to a disorder. And the fabulous Professor Martin Seligman talks about these things becoming permanent. They're always going to be there. Personal, it's about the person. You know, I'm the loser, I can't do this. And they become persuasive in that they restrict people from engaging in other opportunities. So pushing back with, okay, I've heard that. Is there another way to think about this? What are the alternatives? You might say, you never do this, but I saw you in maths engaging in group work, you know, if that's the child's barrier. Or I understand that you're feeling a bit nervous about going to PE, but I notice at recess you run really fast in soccer. So just reminding them that they've done things well in the past, and halting that negative thinking, which is what Michael Horton calls stopping the bus. So we want children to be problem solvers, to have a go, but Michael Horton adds a rider that we should also be insulating kids from the things they can't solve. And in that sense, it's, if a child's anxious about earthquakes, then you limit their news watching, and that can be a conversation with parents. Or if you know they're anxious about natural disasters and you're doing a science unit, how do you I guess, foreground the work, or how do you scaffold them into it in ways that can limit that in the moment strong negative reaction. Now I'm going to share my own personal story of a thinking trap, because that's this negative thoughts and persuasive thoughts about self can be a problem. So in 2016 I'm in Peru, South America, and I'm travelling with two 30-year-olds. One was from Queensland, one was from New South Wales. We'd never met, but we formed this little group, and we had a 30-year-old Peruvian guide called Gloria. And there was an opportunity to go whitewater rafting. Of course, the 30-year-old's terribly excited, because you can't see me, I'm so not 30, and I'm so not a size 10. So when they were saying to me, this will be great, we'll go whitewater rafting, all I could think about was A, squeezing into a wetsuit, because that was obligatory, when I had last swum, and the fact I'd never been whitewater rafting, this would be horrendous. So I was trying to guess what would happen. I was overestimating what could go wrong, and I underestimated my ability to cope. So the thoughts I was having, we'll call them pop-ups. You know, what are you thinking? You're an idiot. Why would you do that? This is going to be embarrassing. You're going to drown, you know, all of these things. So subsequently, I didn't really sleep the night before. And without sleep and being fatigued, I am just so sort of covertly miserable as we're getting into this rubber boat. The pilot at the back, the guy with the GoPro on his head, has looked at me and sort of gone, oh, you know, passenger, as in not active participant, sticks me at the back of the boat, and off we go. Now, I've got to tell you, I did Pilates, and who knew that if you want to be good at whitewater rafting, you should do Pilates and have a really strong core, because the other three end up being flung out the boat at different times. One ends up under the boat and in fact is really quite distressed. I'm hauling one of them in, and I never fell out. And the pilot, in fact, put me at the front of the boat, and I do a lot of gardening. I've got good upper body strength, and I ended up having the best time ever. Like, genuinely, I was so high on adrenaline when I got off that boat, and I'm running around like this crazy person, like, woohoo, you know, best time ever. And the other three are literally saying to me, shut up. And that stuck with me as such a great example of those pop-ups and how we need, when they happen, to push back against the against them with the notion of, what have you done before? Have a think about this. You've coped with things in the past, you can cope with things again. What are your strategies? So 2 of the handouts that you'll be able to access are from Anxiety Canada. One is called a predictor sheet, when you could use with a child who's saying about all the things that could go wrong. You get them to record them, and at the end to say, well, what did happen? And the other is cognitive coping cards. And again, Anxiety Canada have prepared some, so for example, if the child's talking about just general anxiety, that they could fight back by saying, well, anxiety can't hurt me, it's just a bully. All I have to do right now is breathe. This feeling won't last, I can get through this. And there are similar responses for perfectionism, panic and phobias and so on. So a really useful resource. I'm now going to look at a range of what we call self-soothing strategies designed to build coping skills, and I'll go through these quite quickly. So the first one is to think about the things the child loves as a relaxation tool. So we can say, when are they in flow? And flow is a term developed by Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, a Russian psychologist, for when time seems to absolutely stand still. You're doing something that's so engaging and so intriguing that time just ceases to exist. So is it Lego? Is it, a Rubik cube? Is it colouring in? What is it that gets them into that space so that when the anxiety is dialing up, you use those things the child loves to dial them down? And you can build them into their plan to say, when your breathing starts to get shallow and your heart's accelerating, let's do these to pull us back. Interestingly, a research last year in the US showed that the best distracting tool, and it was for adults but it may work for children, is actually Tetris. Tetris is something that really absorbs you in the moment and can be a way to improve breathing and to dial down that flurry of response. Most people have heard of mindfulness. Mindfulness is a relaxation tool, and it helps you to to learn to stay with difficult feelings without analysing, suppressing or encouraging them. And it's certainly being seen as a superpower, and there is a video that you'll watch in a moment, a great little animation that describes the benefit. There are many institutions from medicine. I know at Monash the people who are on dialysis are using mindfulness to actually increase their management of it. We can think about sporting teams. Richmond, quite a fan, premiership twice recently. They put that down to very much their mindfulness coach and that ability to be in the present and also to be collective around it. So there's a shared language around their mental health literacy that has been of great benefit. So watch the video, and I guess the big message from that is we want people to respond wisely versus acting blindly. Another strategy is around just breathing full stop. Providing 10 minutes each day for yourself and for your class can be really beneficial. We call it focused breathing, a chance to observe thoughts and beliefs, or in fact stop that rumination. The breathing hand is a really quick activity. Because I couldn't model it, I've just got a picture of the hand. And in essence, it's about putting the hand up, whether you're left or right-handed, and using the other hand to trace the fingers. So if we start at the wrist and we breathe in as we go up to the top of the thumb, hold the breath, breathe out as we go down, next breath up to the top of the index finger, hold it, going down. Third breath, we breathe in while we slowly go to the top of the middle finger, hold it, breathe down, out, and then up to the top of the ring finger, hold it, breathing out as we go down. Next breath in is holding as we go up to the top of the pinky finger, holding it, and slowly going back down as we breathe out, back to the wrist. When the class might need to transition between an activity or there's a bit of uncertainty, just say breathing hand time, you're modelling it, you're talking them through it. Literally a couple of minutes, but quite a powerful disruptor of what can be negative emotion into the class. And we also want to talk to children about the idea of self-compassion, that they can do their own breathing and use their breathing hand if they're starting to feel the anxiety or the flurry that comes with a difficult task or something that, just an uncomfortable feeling, full stop. Just restating those comments from the earlier video, respond wisely versus acting blindly. We can describe this as the flurry, that when our thoughts are all jumbled, it's a bit like the snow dome, it's shaken up, everything's swirling around, there's just no productive thinking happening. You've lost your USB with your reports on it, you're not the person to do the good hunting for it, you need to get someone who's less emotionally engaged. We've probably all worked that out by now. Like car keys, when they're lost, I can't find them, but thankfully there are more sensible people around me. So we go back to this flurry. The daily mindfulness is simply preparing you for when the flurry happens, the breathing, the settling, it helps us pause. In classes that I've worked with, some people call them a calm down jar, a mind jar, a mindfulness jar, or a glitter jar. But it's really something that children can make with any bottle. A lot of people like the Voss glass water bottles. And there's a mixture of water, clear glue. You can add little pom-poms, sequins, glitter, whatever you want. We shake it up and children just watch it and breathe through it. Now I keep one on my desk. Some days when I've got lots of things to do and I can feel myself getting a bit... It's quite nice just to shake the jar, and for me, shaking the jar vigorously can be quite a release as well. Teaching children to use the mindfulness jar or the calm down jar to manage feelings, to focus the breathing and to find a place of peace. It's a really important skill. Some families I know have them at home for bedtime so that there's a bit of the shake, the deep breathing, which helps the child transition to a good sleep. It's a really simple, cheap idea. Lots and lots of information on the internet if you want to make one. If we now look at a mindfulness practice which is called observation, and I'm going to read a script. So give yourself time now to simply be in the moment, to anchor yourself. We're going to look at noticing 3 things, and your goal is to stay present. Make yourself comfortable wherever you're sitting, lying or standing. Take a few deep breaths. Notice how the breath flows in and out. Plant your feet firmly on the floor. Push them down and notice the floor beneath you. Notice the tension in your leg muscles as you push your feet down. Notice the feeling in your entire body. Notice the feeling of gravity anchoring you to the ground and flowing down through your body. Notice 3 things. Now, think about 3 things you can see around you. Look around at the environment and where you are. Next, think about 3 things you can hear around you. And finally, notice 3 things you can feel in contact with your body. Next, release the tension in your legs. As you release the tension, make room for what you are thinking and for what you are feeling. Allow your thoughts and feelings to move like waves, ebbing and flowing. When a negative thought comes to you, don't try to push it away or hold on to it. Just see it for what it is. Allow your thoughts and emotions to move like waves, ebbing and flowing. Don't try to hold on to them or push them away. Give them space. When you are ready, return to focus on your breathing and then open your eyes. During the day, informal mindfulness can simply be being aware of the present. Sometimes when children are spiralling into the unproductive thoughts, to pull them back, it can be just drawing their attention to something. It could be a cloud out the window. Classrooms in schools that I lead, I don't like any window coverings unless it's to darken the room for, using the smart board or TV effectively. I actually think seeing nature out the window and seeing things can be very powerful to have children focus on them and take their mind away from, unproductive thinking. It can also invite children to savour moments, like seeing a bird land in a tree, seeing a bee, seeing a butterfly, to notice the beauty in that moment, to appreciate the good things around them. And I'll talk a bit more about gratitude later, but gratitude is a very powerful way of moving ourselves out of the negative spiral. So an activity that you could do is called Mindful Seeing. Hopefully where you are, you can see out of your window. If not, here's a window I've prepared earlier. And this is from Hvar on Croatia, a place I visited a few years ago. You're going to look at everything there is to see. Avoid labelling and categorising what you see. Instead of thinking bird or stop sign or building, try to notice the colours, the patterns or the textures. Notice the different shapes you can see out of the window. See the world from the perspective of someone unfamiliar with these sights. Be observant and not critical. Be aware but not fixated. If you become distracted, gently pull your mind away from these thoughts and notice a colour or shape again to pull you back into the right frame of mind. Because what we want children to be able to understand is that a few minutes can open up a world of discovery. Other mindfulness activities you can do with your class is a body scan meditation. And again, if you Google it, you'll find lots and lots of scripts. And the next clip I want you to see is from Go Zen. Fabulous group of health professionals and educators have developed this in the US. And in this one, it is a child, a voice and animation guiding you through a progressive muscle relaxation. It's quite long, but again, if you're home and comfortable, lie down and actually follow this muscle relaxation. More mindfulness activities are things like visualisation scripts, listening to music mindfully. For some children in their culture, prayer can be useful. Cultivating gratitude, and I referred to that before, which is really noticing and reflecting on the good things around us as building up a store of good things for the tough times, and I will talk a bit more about that later. Yoga or laughing yoga. If you haven't come across laughing yoga, again, Google it. Started in India as an activity for older people, or very wise people, I like to think of them of. There is an instructor here in Adelaide I've used with staff. I think he's hilarious and the activity is hilarious, but it is not a good fit for everyone. Walking mindfully, just wandering. A couple of new books recently about the power of walking on the mind. And interestingly, they're saying as people become more mindful in their walking, they no longer listen to music or rely on headsets. They actually just engage fully in the environment. And the last one, forest bathing, beautiful term, came out of Japan, where people really immerse themselves in nature. And again, there's actually a practitioner in Adelaide who can take you on activities of forest bathing. What a beautiful name. And if you have a lovely grounds at your school, perhaps Google forest bathing and see how you can get children to engage more deeply with their natural world. Another activity that might be useful with children is mantra-based mindfulness. So coming up with something like you've got this or I can do this. Around the growth mindset, you might already be using the word yet. I want to learn this, I haven't got it yet, but I know I can. I've got a growth mindset. It was a little mantra I came up with at my previous school. A walking mantra. So again, if you're transitioning, heading off to PE or another lesson, just walking along and the pace is in line with this little saying, which is 1 foot, then the other, peace, then understanding. And there's a little rhythm that comes with the walk. I think Ash Barty is an amazing example of the use of mindfulness and mantras, because she, in interviews, talked about how she had lost the passion and the connection and the belief in tennis. And it was her thinking about it differently and understanding that for her to be a great performer, she actually needed positive relationships around her. And so ensures that on all of her trips, she actually has one of her family members now. Certainly, with the use of the mantra, even though you're saying it, your mind can drift. But once you're aware of that, you just come back again to the mantra, which again can be 1 foot, then the other, peace, then understanding. or again, Google mantras. There's a lot out there that might inspire you. Going back to this book by Dawn Hubner, she advocates that for children who have lots of worries, that they actually have worry time. Now, this is only possible if they have access to an adult who has the time. So whether it's a parent or it's a support worker at school, or the teacher can find some time while children are doing something else. So we certainly don't want to set it up as a precedent. But it's where the children note in a book, they express their worries and then sit with you and you guide them into problem solving around them. It's in a quiet place, there's no interruptions, there's no other children, they just get to talk it out, to come up with possible solutions. You know, I'm worried about no one will play with me at lunchtime. So the conversation would be, how would you get into a game? Who would you talk to? How would you open the conversation? For some children, they'll say, no one will play with me, but they actually don't want to engage in an activity that anyone else wants to engage in. If it's not an active sport, or it's card swap, or it's, you know, drawing rainbows with chalk, scaffolding them into the activity and identifying the range of things available in the yard is really important, because they'll say, well, no one will play with me, but unpacking that, there's a whole lot that sits beneath that they need an adult's help to explore. I've spoken about breathing. It's so critical to sort of calming the body and releasing the tension. Other examples of breathing is the belly breathing. There's a little illustration there. It's just ensuring that the belly is activated. Mirror breathing is for children who might be struggling to get their breaths, to manage them themselves. It can be follow me. So look, I'm the teacher, I'm breathing in, just do what I do. As I breathe in, you breathe out. That's the mirror breathing, it's the copying. A breathing buddy, a child might have a soft toy on their belly, so they're lying on the ground, lying on the floor, and as they breathe with the belly, the toy should go up and down. And that can be quite a good little distracting activity as well. And the last one's the Hoberman. You'll find some teachers who use that to show the breath in and out with the expanding of the lungs. And in fact, children can use them. As we breathe in, the Hoberman expands. As we breathe out, it contracts. And you can have children leading the breathing activity with the class at the start or end of the day. Once a child has identified, I guess, the worries, the things they're worried about, I can't go to PE because I don't like hoops, whatever it is, with time and with support, they can slowly and repeatedly face what they're afraid of. This does require trusted adults who can think about what are the scaffolds needed, you know, who can do the happy dance when they're successful. Years ago, I worked as a behaviour coach, and there was a boy, call him Bob, and he had a fear of the front office and such outbursts and meltdowns that he was often required to attend the front office. He had a really supportive principal, absolutely brilliant, but Bob just saw that as restricting. I worked with him in an SSO where every day for weeks and weeks he walked to that front office 20 times. You know, we called it patterning, where they'd go to the office to deliver a note, to pick something up, to try to break that mental picture in his head that the front office was a place of horror. It did pay off over time, and I want to pay full kudos to the fabulous, and sadly has passed, but Neville Jarvis, who 20 times a day dropped what he was doing to greet this little boy with positivity and great, you know, gratitude that he'd delivered this note, but to disrupt that negative thinking. So in the end, it was a very successful placement for that child. Touching a class pet, if that's a challenge, from looking at a picture of the budgie to ultimately being able to put their hand in and change the seed. It's the adults in this who can think about the problem solving, but we need children to be actively engaged in it. An often not used, or I think not understood, powerful strategy is that of distraction and priming. And laughter and humour can be really useful. If something's really funny, there's that kind of sharp intake of breath, and you're like, oh, what? It's unexpected, but it can disrupt, again, that negative thinking, that worry time, the tense body. What does your class find amusing? There are things I thought was hilarious, and apparently students have told me I'm not as funny as I think I am, but there are wonderful clips on YouTube. Are there memes using QR codes that link to a joke? You know, if they're someone who prefers more auditory stuff, what's a funny story they can hear? again, laughing yoga. And there's a clip coming up next. Now, I just want to forewarn you, it's adults only. It does contain a swear word. You probably have never heard one in your life, so you may not even know which one it is. But it's a Graham Norton episode where Greg Davies, who was a teacher and now a comedian, is on the couch along with Ryan Gosling, Russell Crowe and Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster has been telling stories, and Graham Norton asks Greg to tell one from his teaching days. The reason I really like this clip is because you see that Ryan Gosling is incredibly generous with laughter. And in fact, when I watch this, and I can't tell you how many times, it still makes me laugh, I laugh because of Ryan Gosling's generosity in laughter. If you've had a story in your teaching career like this, well done. Before, when I spoke about challenging the unhelpful behaviour that these children can present with, we might call it partial agreement. So they might say, you know, I'm not going to PE because it's stupid. And you can say, yeah, well, okay, I can see that you think it's stupid. You know, talk to me why. What I'm noticing is that you said are happy in the yard, you're playing there, so what is it about PE? And we'll give it a go today. What do you think will happen? All of those questions, you're indicating I'm listening, but you're reminding them of past examples of success. You can remind them of the bully. Oh, is this Donald? Is Donald telling you won't like PE? How do we push back against Donald? Share your own experiences. Do the think aloud, and you might say, oh, look, I remember when I went to a PE class once and I kept thinking about when my shoelaces tied up. You know, again, we're distracting them. And remember to be there for them. So the question I've got there about what does your language indicate? What's the bag of words that you have, or the bag of phrases that you can call upon really quickly to get them into this space of having a go? And certainly I've worked with teachers who just are of this amazing range of language. And so it might be one to ask your colleagues, well, what do you say when a child says to you, I'm not going to do X because it's stupid? Use the resources available to you in your site. Interesting, on the internet I came across self-soothing kits, so anti-anxiety kit, isn't that interesting? So again, it might be with parents, what are the tastes the child likes, what do they like to touch? You know, they've got little sensory blankets or, you know, little stress balls they might like. What do they like to smell? You know, my son loved lavender. He just loved the smell of lavender and he associated that with calm. What do they like to look at? What might they like to hear, particularly if they use a headset? Or, you know, there's a quiet corner with whale sounds. I don't know, what would it take? Because I really want to focus your attention to thinking about your own well-being, what's your kit? What's your go-to that gets you into a happy place? I've shared mine, you know, good wine. I love my garden, reading, chocolates, music. I also really love exploring. I'm a curious person, so whether it's physical travel or reading about places. I've got a photo there from the outside of the Manuscript Museum in Yerevan, and then a door which is from a quirky little village called Kinalug at the top of Azerbaijan. Just love to see how other people live. What is it for you? What do you like to listen to look at, to taste, to feel and touch? Develop your own kit and activate it when you need it. I think, in a way, gratitude has become a bit glib in some places. You know, just practice gratitude. Think about 3 good things. The purpose of gratitude is to reflect on them and notice them and think about what it means to you. So, for example, a child might have a smartwatch and I'll say, what are you grateful for? Oh, that I've got a smartwatch. Let's think about how you got the smartwatch. Where did you get it? Oh, my parents bought it for me. So how were they able to pay for it? Well, they had money. How did they get the money? Well, they work. Why did they buy you the watch? Because they thought I'd like it. But why would they give you the watch? Why not me? Well, because they love me. It's digging down for them to reflect that I've got this watch because I have parents who care about me, who love me, who have disposable income, who can afford to buy it, and who took pride in giving it to me. And getting children into that deeper space of thinking deeply as opposed to glibness is really powerful. And the purpose of perhaps documenting it is to have a store of good things to think about when it's tough. So when children say, I don't want to do this, I don't like it, you can say, but you showed me a photo last week, or I remember you talking to me about when you did that. You can do this, you've done it before, you can do it again, let's reactivate your mantra. When we think about gratitude, it really is a deeper thinking about what's going good for us in our life. Another strategy some schools are engaging in around anxiety is a dog. Certainly for many leaders it is something to think about, potentially not possible in your place. People have been creative to address some of the challenges of our young people's mental health. Transitions are really critical, as you know, for these children. So if going out to the yard is going to be seen as problematic, what story might you tell? A story of someone's problem solving or hope, or is it a guided meditation or a mindfulness activity? Apps such as Smiling Mind are free, they're Australian, and they have a number of short little activities that you can use. And remember, mindfulness takes practice, or meditation takes practice, so holding brief practice sessions but ensuring children can move to fluency. And given that mindfulness is such a potentially powerful strategy, I did wonder what else was out there. And I came across thymus tapping. Now, I'm not promoting it, I'm just saying how interesting that there are people that believe that tapping certain parts of the body can actually improve our mental health. Go and have a look. In conclusion, think about how your classroom operates with mental health literacy. How do you talk about emotions? What opportunities do children have to reflect on them? Build in times to practice, and remember, in times of peace. So the last time we can engage in some mindfulness is when we're deep in the flurry. We need to learn it before that. To know the warning signs for children, to understand what the triggers might be, but you don't give in to them. It's about, we're going to move over the trigger, we're going to move around the trigger. And we want children to experience that magnificent feelings that come from mastering something tricky. There's a lot to be said for accomplishment and achievement in our wellbeing. And if a child has an activity at school that's a barrier, if they can get around that, that's positive for all. Certainly learn from the lapses. So if a child's doing well with something and then falls back, what can we learn from that? What else might we need to put in place? We certainly want to challenge this behaviour and create challenges beyond the comfort zone, because it's in that messy place, James Nottingham in the learning pit, in the messy place that we are in the learning place, and coming out of it again is that wonderful feeling of being successful. Remember me jumping out the whitewater raft, running around the edge, woohoo, looking like a loon. Oh, I can still recall that feeling so well. We're going to stick with kids. Some children, particularly the older they are, they've had more opportunity to develop these habits of unproductive thinking and a physical response. Engaging with parents in what the child can manage well, but also in pointing out to them that these are skills that they need through life, and it's in our interest to develop them together. Use that personal and social capability continuum. Just an example, I had a parent some years ago who said their child wasn't sleeping at night. She was really anxious because she was the recipient of some bullying at school or some friendship conflicts. And the mother said to me, "This is terrible, you need to do something, but you're not to speak to my daughter." And it was quite a tense conversation, but one that needed to be had, because this daughter, who was in Year 7, was refusing to engage in behaviour we actually expect of Year 2s in the personal and social capability continuum, and that is to understand that people can have a different point of view to your own, and understand that if I want things to be different, I need to be active in it. Use the curriculum to say to parents, I see your child is struggling to do this, but it's actually part of the curriculum for all Australian students where we can work with you to move them through it. And finally for you, this can be hard work, and we have an employee assistance program the department runs and pays for. The department does not run it. It is completely confidential, it is free, but the department as our employer provides this for us. And there are 4 you can choose from, and I really encourage you to seek the support of these people to unpack some of the tricky problems you might be experiencing. We expect children to jump into this. How do we support ourselves to do this better? You're worth it. I want you to take a minute now to reflect on what will you do, because practice is what's required for us to develop fluency in our practice. And if it's not for children, what will you do for yourself that actually puts you in a good place to lead this with children? I really believe that student wellbeing and teacher wellbeing are quite extrinsically linked. But I'll say it in the context, when students do better, we feel good, and when we feel good, we are better. So if you can support these children to manage these challenges, you're going to feel really good as part of that. Because being a professional, I go back to this, we do engage in learning ourselves, and it is phenomenal what we can achieve. So think about, what will you do? I'm going to conclude there with a quote that I've found really powerful over the years, and that is that in the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. And I think that sums up teachers, that we can have that dip into the learning pit, we can find it frustrating, but we always find a way. Anxiety Canada there is a great resource. They've got online courses around anxiety you can enrol in for free, and really good resources. And then Michael Horton, as I referred to earlier, has run training for teachers and for parents online called No Scaredy Cats. He's written some really good resources about moving children out of anxiety. Thank you for your participation today. I hope that you're about to go and do something wonderful for yourself, because remember, you're worth it. Thank you.